Grace and peace to you from the one who is, and who was, and who is to come. In mid-2001, my mother was a member of an investment club. At one particular meeting, a member brought in a hot stock tip she had gotten from some high-level corporate types she worked with. They turned her on to a can't-lose investment, and she hoped the club would get in on the action so they could share in the profits that were gushing from this stock. Much to their credit, the other members of the club turned to the principles they had established as a group for investing. One of these was, invest in things we understand. In line with this principle, they asked their enthusiastic clubmate, so what exactly does an energy trading company do? She told them she wasn't quite sure, so the club decided not to invest in this stock. She told them she was going to go ahead and use some of her own money to buy this stock. The company was called Enron. This reminds us that how you approach your investing makes a difference. If you approach investing from an angle that only asks, can I make a ton of money right away, Enron would look like a good investment. But if you approach investing from an angle that asks questions about whether the business model is sound and what the prospects are beyond the current quarter, you would probably have invested elsewhere. In this part of the Sermon on the Mount that we hear every year on Ash Wednesday, Jesus doesn't question whether or not his disciples are going to practice charitable giving, prayer, and fasting. The question Jesus raises is how his disciples will approach these practices. Will they try and use them to earn people's immediate admiration and approval? Or will they use them to strengthen and deepen their relationship with God? Or, to put it another way, if faith practices are our spiritual capital, Jesus is asking us to think about our approach to investing that capital. Jesus is upfront about some of the approaches we should steer clear of when it comes to investing that spiritual capital. Tooting your own horn when you're giving, making a spectacle of yourself in prayer, and sharing your suffering with the world when you fast are all mistakes when it comes to investing your spiritual capital. Jesus isn't condemning charitable giving or prayer or fasting. But Jesus is saying that these approaches to faith practices are a bad investment of your spiritual capital because they are investing with the wrong objective. The mistakes Jesus is warning us about grow from investing your spiritual capital to earn people's approval. Investing your spiritual capital to gain people's approval is like buying Enron stock. You get a quick gain that feels good, but discover soon enough that it really is not worth anything close to what you had thought. Jesus points out that those who invest their spiritual capital to earn people's praise, those who tend to their faith practices as a way to impress people, have already received their reward. People's praise and adulation is a reward that can come quickly and easily, and it nearly always evaporates just as fast. When you invest your spiritual capital to earn people's praise, sooner or later, though usually sooner, you will find your investment losing value as people's praise turns to silence, to criticism, or just to someone else. Jesus is advising us that investing your spiritual capital to earn people's approval is a bad investment. It might show some quick and impressive gains, but because it depends on fickle, fallible humanity, it will inevitably crash. The ashes we're going to smear on our foreheads today are not practicing our piety before others for the purpose of them seeing it. The ashes we're marked with today are a visible, tangible reminder of where all of us as people are headed for if we're left to our own devices. This means all the dividends we earn from investing in people's praise is destined for the ash heap as well. Thankfully for us, Jesus goes ahead and also names some better ways of investing our spiritual capital. Jesus advises us that when you give to those in need, do so in a way that obscures other people's view, to keep the aim of your giving on blessing others as God has blessed you, rather than earning people's praise. Jesus advises us that when you pray, do so in a way that makes sure your prayer is focused on speaking and listening to God, rather than focusing on making sure other people overhear just how holy you are. Jesus advises us that when you fast, go about the rest of your day as usual, So the focus of your fast is reminding yourself of your dependence on God, not impressing people with how you suffer for your faith. This approach to investing your spiritual capital builds on the principle of investing in order to strengthen and deepen your relationship with God. Jesus advises us that investing our spiritual capital to strengthen and deepen our relationship with God, focusing our faith practices on God and not on other people, is guaranteed to pay dividends. Jesus understood that investing spiritual capital to strengthen and deepen our relationship with God is a sound investment because Jesus had what scholar Sherman Johnson called a vivid consciousness of the reality, the power, and the presence of God. This means investing our spiritual capital in growing our relationship with God is a good investment because, as our book study is teaching us during Lent, God is closer than we think. If we think of other people as nearby and God as far off, earning people's praise definitely seems like the better objective for your investment. But in Christ, God has already come close to us. Strengthening and deepening our relationship with God is a better investment because it doesn't seek to earn anything, but to open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to that life-giving relationship God has already given us as a free gift. While the ashes will smear on our foreheads today are a reminder of our mortality, they also mark us with the cross. Joined to Christ in baptism, the cross is that crash that wipes out all of our bad investments and guarantees that God will pay us that resurrection dividend that Jesus earns. Trusting this promise of a guaranteed return guides how we can invest our spiritual capital during Lent. Over these 40 days to come, our community is going to offer a number of investment opportunities aimed at strengthening and deepening our relationship with God. We're going to gather for fellowship and support with our fellow investors over meals on Wednesday evenings. We'll come together for prayer, preaching, and song in our midweek worship. And we've already begun to gather in groups to study and pray on the book, God is Closer Than You Think. This book seeks to help us increase our capacity to experience the presence of God. Or to say it another way, this book is helping us learn to invest in a deeper, stronger relationship with God. In just a few moments, we'll begin our observance of Lent in earnest, with a call to reflect not just on our personal faults and failures, but on the concrete ways we have embodied those failures in our lives and on the harm this has caused. If we're honest about our own brokenness, it reminds us that investing our spiritual capital in earning the praise of others who are just as broken as we are is like buying so much Enron stock. But if we follow Jesus' guidance and invest our spiritual capital in deepening and strengthening our relationship with God, we are promised a guaranteed return. These 40 days to come are a great time to invest, to focus on how our faith practices can open our eyes, our ears, and our hearts to the relationship God has already given us as a gift. These 40 days of investing our spiritual capital come to an end with the crash on the cross. But that crash wipes out all the bad investments we have ever made. And when we stand on the empty tomb at Easter, God allows us to collect the resurrection dividend that Christ has earned for us all. Thanks be to God.